everyone. Welcome back to the Animal Aspirations Podcast, podcast sharing conversations between veterinary students, professionals, and people working in animal-related careers. Our goal is simple: to educate, inspire, and diversify the veterinary profession. Today, we're joined by Grace, a vet student, and she'll be talking about her journey into veterinary medicine and a bit about her background. So let's get into it. So, what year and program are you in?
I'm in the BVetMed program, and I'm a year 3 student.
Oh, can you tell us a little bit about your life before vet school?
Sure. So prior to coming to vet school, I was in the Navy for 9 years. Granted, 4 of which were of the United States Naval Academy. So that's my undergrad. And the circumstances were a little bit more confined versus joining the actual military out in the fleet, where I served as a surface warfare officer, which is really just fancy language for saying that I was an officer on a surface warfare ship. So
That's quite a transition.
it's a bit of a transition.
Yeah. How do you think that working in the Navy has prepared you for vet school?
Being in the Navy taught me how to operate calmly under really stressful situations, as well as discipline and resiliency.
So yeah, that's amazing. So what influenced you to start a career in veterinary medicine, coming from like a very different career before that?
I'd say actually going into the Navy was a little bit off track of where I originally would have seen my life trajectory. In high school, actually growing up in general, I always thought that I would pursue some avenue of medicine. However, I decided to go to the Naval Academy. And from there, once you go to the Naval Academy, you have to serve an obligatory minimum 5 years, depending on which service you decide to go into.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on a surface warfare ship. So that was a minimum of 5 years. And at the time, I saw that as being sort of my extent of being in the military, and then that I would transition out of the military and pursue medicine once again.
Okay. So how was that transition when you started to go to vet school? Was it difficult to transition between military to vet school?
Transitioning specifically from the workforce, military, back as a student, I didn't think that specifically was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, what was challenging was learning how to be a student after 10 years, because of how much technology actually had changed. Because when I did my undergrad, we just had laptops.
Right.
We didn't have iPads. Teachers didn't give us lectures. So you just had to post. No, so you had to show up with your pen and paper and a spiral, the spiral.
Oh yeah.
So, and you just had to write down everything that you could while it's up there, and you just pray that hopefully your friend got the notes that you didn't get. So learning how to be a student with iPads and lectures, that was a transition for me. But I think it ultimately made me a better student because I learned more about active recall and spaced repetition. So it really transformed how I began to study. And I also am lucky in a way, because after graduating the Naval Academy, I didn't have all the required classes to apply to vet school in the US. So I had to do about 2.5 years of prerequisite coursework where I got to practice all of these new ways of learning and rotating before I actually started vet school.
Yeah, so like a little crash course.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So you said you're always interested in medicine. What made you decide to follow the veterinary medicine route and not just the human medicine route?
The first job I ever wanted to pursue as a child was to be a vet. And it wasn't until I took down my first child and I witnessed euthanasia that I thought to myself, I can't do this. And so I switched more towards medicine route. So after the military, when I was taking my prerequisite classes as a postdoc, I was also still working in shark research lab in Hawaii because, again, like my love for conservation, a lot of community projects on the island for conservation of wildlife. Someone had asked me, why am I pursuing human vet if I love conservation and I could marry the two interests together and then pursue that. And it made me reflect back on euthanasia as a child and thinking that I couldn't do that. But I wanted to explore the option a little bit more. So I started shadowing veterinarians and revisiting euthanasia. I was able to move past the sadness that euthanasia brings and learn more about compassion and empathy that euthanasia brings. And that was a pivotal moment for me to be able to reopen the door to vet lives.
No, definitely euthanasia is like, I mean, it's a heavy topic within VetMed for sure. And I think that that's really admirable that you took the time to like look back at that, especially because it led you to your future careers now too. Did you have any vets that were particularly helpful with discovering that?
Yes, absolutely. Because one of the first clinics where I worked at, I was still really struggling with euthanasia. And it wasn't until I met doctor, her name is Melissa Shaughnesss. Big shout out to her. She is absolutely incredible. And she was the one who really transformed my outlook of euthanasia. It's something that she is very passionate about. And she's actually gone on, I met her as an emergency veterinarian, but she's now gone on to become a hospice. She goes to people's homes and actually helps them transition their sick.
Anything that experience has shaped the way that you want to be a vet?
It's really helped me understand how much compassion it takes to make the difficult decision to go with euthanasia. And I think as a future veterinarian, being able to be there for these patients really reassured that this may be the kind of thing we can do for them because
Should anyone else be in your life play like kind of a bigger role like, as well with helping steer towards the veterinary career?
veterinary medicine as a whole, not so much, but my mom has been a very influential figure in pursuing medicine. She has a position, but she didn't start medical school until she was 39 with two young children. That's inspiring. And it's very inspiring, especially because now I've started vet school at the age of 30. So my mom did it almost a decade later than where I started. It's been really inspirational. And also because when she was in medical school, they used to have these family days where you could bring your family and they had all sorts of activities. And one of the activities was to suture a big foot. Oh my gosh. Weird. My husband is strange for kids. But that was what really sparked my love for medicine and wanting to pursue surgery. I remember after that first experience, I was like asking my mom, when is the next family?
What are you currently enjoying about that school?
Goodness, so many things. Hands down, what I love about vet school is that we get to learn material that is actually applicable to us. Yeah. And it's so interesting. I think for a lot of us who have previous degrees, especially from the US, we are required to take a lot of prerequisite classes
Like general education kinds of classes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I remember, at least for math and English and stuff like that, yes, those were the classes that I ended up spending the most amount of time on because they just weren't as interesting to me. So I always had to spend more time. Yes. Awesome. So now that we get to really just learn all of the information that's so helpful to our futures as veterinarians, I just think it's so interesting. And also we have the most incredible professors. They're all brilliant. And it's truly an honor sometimes when I'm sitting there in class, I'm like, how do I get this opportunity? Yes.
Is there like a certain topic that you've enjoyed learning about so far?
I really loved all of our surgery and
It's
really cool. I think that's probably the top. Really, all of it's really fascinating, even in the areas that I don't necessarily see myself going. It's so cool to see all of these professors who are so passionate about it that it makes me actually excited.
Yeah, no, it rubs off on us. What about challenges with vet school?
Challenges with vet school. I think the biggest challenge for me is I face imposter syndrome a lot more than I would like to admit. There's just so much content and feels like not enough time, especially because not only from the academic side of wanting to be a good student, but because the information I'm learning hopefully make us a better veterinarian to our future patients. So when it feels like there's just too much to actually fully grasp, I think that's the biggest challenge. How do you try and like combat that impulsive syndrome? For me personally, I have to constantly remind myself that no one can know everything and just to try my best, whether that any time with more repetition of seeing the material and also right.
You're here. You made it to vet school. So I think that's like a huge step that we tend to take for granted. Like we know that that's a natural progression, right? You get into vet school, you become the vet, but it's like that you can be proud of that, you know? Yeah.
Do you think like your expectations of vet school have matched like the reality when you've joined?
My expectations are easily uncertain. It has just been phenomenal. The material is really difficult, but again, the content that we're learning, the professors that we have, and the experiences that we have as well. It's almost indescribable sometimes when I think about it. I mean, even last year, if we were doing a lot more dissection work, a lot of times during dissections, I would just almost be in awe of the opportunities that we have. And it's just amazing.
How are you staying grounded?
Uh, Meditation and yoga, which I'm sure that a lot of people in our cohort wouldn't be surprised to hear.
Could you tell us a bit more about your meditation yoga? How the breakdown about that?
Definitely. So every day I practice meditation, and there's so much science behind the benefits of meditation. I would recommend looking into it more if you're interested. And also with yoga. So that's been a passion of mine for over a decade now, both as a practitioner as well as a teacher. So finding the time to be able to do both of those is actually quite easy because when you really love something, you make time for it.
Definitely. So I guess that kind of segues into my next question about how you're maintaining like this work-life balance.
So it is challenging at times. Last year, for example, I was teaching between 8 to 12 classes a week, sometimes 16 classes a week. This year, because of the commuting difference, I've had to reduce down to about 4 to 6 classes a week. But it definitely can feel challenging at times. But for me, I find a lot of freedom in routine and scheduling, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but when I have my schedule in front of me and I've blocked out certain blocks of time for this is where I'm going to work out, this is what I'm going to do yoga, these are the classes that I have to teach this week. Sleep is so important. Don't sleep, honestly.
No.
Do you yoga as like do you teach in uni or is it more of like a business?
I currently teach out in town, so I teach across 4 to 5 different studios, and I have my permanent classes, which are the same time every single week, and then summer classes. So we have time off from uni, then I might pick up some extra classes or weekends.
What medicine do you want to pursue after graduation? Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it. I'm really torn between maybe pursuing a residency in a surgical specialty, or emergency medicine or example. We're keeping everything open.
I know, like, I mean, people end up changing their mind within their career too. It's like we have so much opportunity. I think that that is really flexible. Like,
Yeah, that is really, really nice. One of the biggest reasons that I think someone should pursue that is all of the different avenues that you're going to pursue, not just at the beginning, but right in the life.
Thinking about your younger self, what's one piece of advice you would tell your younger self that would have been really like helpful to you?
I would say if I were to go back in time, I would look at my CV and see where I could use improvement because everything on the CV is pretty much applicable to vet school. in some capacity. So on your CV, if you have your work experience, you have your education, and then you also have actually research as well. So for me, where I was really lacking coming to that school was clinical experience, again, because I was more so on the human route. And during the COVID, it was really hard to get that clinical experience. So, and I see that playing out for me in real time now, because when we're learning a lot of material in our didactic studies, it's hard for me to put to context what a lot of my classmates who have a lot of experience, they're able to just go, oh yeah, I know that medication, it's used for this. Whereas I'm just having to look at black and white, right? It's essentially trying to memorize this medication is for this. So for me, it would have been more clinical experience. But if you are someone who maybe you don't have any research experience, you're looking at that on your CBA, there's no research experience. Maybe try to find some research because your university might require.
So what advice would you give young people who are trying to pursue VetMed currently?
I know that getting into vet school could be really hard and the statistics aren't great. So my best recommendation is to, one, don't give up, and two, take a step back, look at your application, look at your CV, and see where you can improve your CV a lot. And also reflect as to what you can do differently. And so for me, for example, again, I was preparing during COVID, and it was really hard for me to get to a clinic. I was emailing, I was calling all the clinics on the island to basically asking, can I come Shannon, can I your experience, can I blah, 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 right? Because I really needed that clinical experience. And either they wouldn't respond, it was a busy time, or they couldn't do it because of COVID restrictions. So then I think, okay, this is not obviously working out, but I still need these clinical hours. So I changed the tactic. I then started emailing saying, do you have any positions where you need extra help, especially? I emailed clinics asking if they needed any help with routine tasks, such as expressing anal glands and trimming dog nails.
I said they would love to have someone else do that.
The responses I got were almost immediate. This is what I mean about resiliency and changing up your tactic. Yes, if what's working or what you're trying isn't working, you need to change it up. So even if it means that you will just go and express anal glands from 9 to 5, hey, that's getting you in the door. That's experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. How about like more general advice for people that aren't specifically pursuing veterinary medicine?
I would say never lose sight of your passions and hobbies, because you need to have a separation between being a student and being a human. Right. So maintaining your hobbies, maintaining your passions, and also getting some movement in some capacity, whatever that looks like for you.
Nice. And finally, why do you think it's important for people to see that you don't need to have the traditional path to vet school?
I would say that having a non-traditional path to vet school has given me opportunities that I don't think I would have ever thought if I went straight to vet school. And it's also helped me build more well-rounded and unique CV, which I think probably helped me in be accepted into that school.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's really great that you were able to show them that. Really great. But do you have any projects in the works, or is there anywhere that students can reach you for advice?
Sure. So I'm starting a Instagram page just to be a community more so for pre-vet students, vet students, in resources and things that I wish I had known earlier, things that have worked for me, things that haven't worked for me. Hoping to make the transition and make life in vet school a bit easier. It's in the works, so bear with me. But if you have any questions or you're comments of anything at all and you just want to reach out, find me on Instagram at Grace VetMed.
Awesome. Go check that out, guys.
Thank you. We've got a little rapid fire question round. You ready?
Yes.
All right. What skill from the Navy has helped you most as a vet student?
Having discipline. Would you say that the Navy ship or the vet clinic is more chaotic?
I'd say being in the Navy was more chaotic.
That's fair. Especially on deployment. That was like, oh my God.
Anything I've seen so far. If you could take one animal on a naval mission, what would it be?
A dog. That dog. Automatic happiness to everybody on the ship.
It's true. What surprises people the most about going from Navy to VetMed?
I think because most people know me as a yoga teacher now.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for them to ever picture me as being in the military, which I understand.
Yeah. That's fair.
What's one thing that will make you busy up after a long day?
Seeing my dog.
Book smart or hands-on learning?
Hands-on learning.
So thank you, Grace, for joining our podcast, and thank you to our listeners.
To learn more about Animal Aspirations and the work that we do, please check out our website at animalaspirations.com.
And don't forget to follow the podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Educate,
Inspire, diversify.